Paul Nurk is the DRL champion, and he has 3 years racing experience in DRL itself. We talk about what race day is actually like in today's episode, and I think that you're really going to like it. Enjoy. So there was a moment in, I guess it was level 2. I think Vanover had just taken the second of the 3 that he won.
Okay.
And he had beaten out Gab pretty badly. Mm-hmm. Or as I recall, Gab was not happy with the race that he ran, I think is what actually had happened. And there was this moment on camera where everybody just kind of like scattered. And Vanover was literally in the middle of the frame. And it was like nobody wanted to be around him. And I remember specifically you walked around your cockpit and you walked over and you told him good job. And is that part of your makeup in racing, is always acknowledging the good job? Or was that just a moment where you saw someone that was apart and you wanted to make them apart? Or does that even bring to memory the moment that I'm talking about?
I'm not sure if it does, but it brings up an interesting point, and I think for me personally, like racing is primarily a mental sport, and it's something that you could look at it like shooting or archery or bowling or golf or something like that, where 1% of what makes you win or lose is what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. And the other 99% is all up to you. And I mean, one of the things that's amazing to me about Vanover is that he's able to really focus in on that 99%. And so, if you look at that and you say, he's not necessarily beating all of us. He's first conquering himself, and then it exhibits itself as him being faster. If that makes sense. And so, mm-hmm. if somebody beats me, it's because they've first conquered themselves. And so, everyone, I think, deserves congratulations and opportunity as a result of having achieved that purpose. Does that make sense?
It does.
Moment, I don't know.
Go ahead.
So if in that moment it manifested as exactly that cerebral of a process, awesome. I don't think it did. It was more of a, hey, good job. Like, I want everybody to remember that racing is first about being faster than yourself.
I'd like to break in right here to thank today's sponsor. And today's sponsor is none other than Pyrodrone. They have been in the FPV industry for a really long time. They provide incredible customer care and very fast shipping. And you will really enjoy using them. They've given us a 10% off coupon code for sponsoring today's episode, which you can find in the link below. It is Pyro Rollins. I would like to thank Pyrodrone for sponsoring this episode, and I hope that you also get to use that coupon code. I like that. I like that a lot. It was just one of those, it's one of those mental images that just sticks out, and I don't even know that if we were to go back and watch it again, that it would play out the same way. But I do remember you walking across, and it seemed like you were making an effort to say good job, which was, I know for me, I've always thought well of you, but it definitely raised my respect for you, because at that moment there was nobody wanting to walk over to Vanover and say good job. So
it stings a little bit in the moment, but at the end of the day with racing, like the most important thing for being a professional racer is to be a professional racer. And if I'm gonna be super angry or frustrated or be like, oh, you got lucky, that's not being professional. That's being confrontational and silly. It's somebody has mastered their craft, and we're going to go head to head again in a second, so we might as well respect each other for the process, you know.
I mean, there's a real aspect of that though, where if your outlook on it is that Vanover won that race because he beat himself, then you could easily be in the next round could be yours. It's not like you've got to beat Vanover. You've got to beat yourself.
Yes. Except I try not to phrase it that way usually, but
yeah, sorry.
I spent a lot of time thinking about that actually. So yeah, conquer yourself.
Conquer yourself.
There's the
Paul
name of the episode
beats
right
himself.
There. I didn't say it. We can rewind the tapes, and you will see that I did not say that I was. Yeah. I just wanted.
Oh man. Thank you. That was awesome. So, all right, let's bring it back down to the professional level. What's it like? Like, what's a day of racing like on the DRL set?
Oh, there's a great question. So we have our non-elimination days and we have elimination days. So like our non-elimination days are usually much chiller. Like there's cameras rolling, but they're just kind of more like capturing the behind the scenes, like the kind of attitudes and atmospheres that we're reflecting. We do practice. The practice is all staggered, so we're not like all launching at the same time. We have a chance to get out, learn the course, develop some lines, all of these things. Mm-hmm. Then we break into non-elimination heads-up racing after that as practice. So we're gonna, all be launching at the same time and try out. Is the launch going to be weird? Is there anything that you want to be learning and practicing? And that non-elimination practice also does the process of ranking us for how semifinal groups will break down. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the ranking round, we'll have a TQ essentially leading into semifinals, and that person is gonna, be seated against the fourth person and the sixth person and the eighth person. However, I don't remember how it breaks down, but so we go through that whole process on one day, and then the next day is much more serious. All the cameras are rolling, everybody's freaking out because they're going into elimination races, and so we'll typically so like I'll just talk about Miami because it's fresh and it's pretty it's a pretty good example of a lot we would go through, and it was a little bit unique for this one because we filmed both episodes on the same day, which is not normally what's going to happen, but we showed up at about, I think I was on site at 5 p.m. or so, did a couple interviews with local news, and did some little extra content for, social or whatever. And then I think at about 7 o'clock, we did a practice warm up. So we had already done elimination batteries the day before. So now this day was going to be semifinals directly. We went into an elimination bracket so we did a practice round, and then we started semifinals. So like, if you watch level 1's semifinals on the Twitter feed, like that is the first battery the first like competitive battery that we've flown that day. So we filmed both semifinal rounds, then we shot the finals for level 1. So, everybody's kind of coming in off that, and then we reset everything, started level 2, shot semifinals level 2, and then shot finals level 2. And so in the those are all of the batteries that you see there are what we flew on set. So like that's what 20 something batteries of the highest level of competition and focus and stuff like that. And I think we wrapped for the day around 4 a.m. after we did the champagne spraying and stuff. So we're talking 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. Of shooting. Now, we knew that it was going to be late, so like the night before I didn't go to bed until 5 a.m. I slept until 4 p.m. I woke up, went through the process, got to set, etc. So
one thing I want to bring you back to, because I mean this is totally fascinating to me. When you're running your practice rounds, when you're grinding at home, how are you recreating the elements that you're facing in these massive, like, single. I mean, just I think about some of the stuff I saw in Miami and some of the things I've seen in, like, London and places like that. How are you recreating individual elements and practicing those individual elements, or are you building out tracks that you know are going to come up?
That's a great question. So usually, if we're looking at like a 21-day grind schedule, the first 7 days are just free practice. It's you do common elements, do normal things. If there's a track already set up for 5-inch quads, I'll fly that, whatever, and just kind of get back on the juice. And then about 2 weeks before every race, so like the last 14 days, they release a course map to us. And so I have like an isometric like layout of of the place that we're going to be flying with the actual course line and the elements that are going to be there. So then what I do is I set up elements from that course map each day. And I make sure that I set up the entrance and exit of that element exactly as it would be. So like, for when we were practicing for Miami, I set up the stadium dive. Where
how'd you do that?
I would line up I just had a tree that was high. I didn't know if it was the right height or not. And just built the course so that the exit or the entrance line would be roughly that kind of maneuver where you come up over, and then just a best guess distance away, I had that next gate where you kind of come back into the VOM. And so I just practiced what would it look like. Do you come over and dip the nose and pull yourself down? Do you have to kind of do like some sort of banking maneuver or whatever? So I knew each of those things that I wanted to practice. And a better example for me was for Saudi, for Championship Kingdom of season 3. There was the sky gate where you go like up through a gate, over, and then down through a gate, and it's like both a building dive. What I actually did is across the street from my house, there's a high school. And I went and bought a bunch of 2x4s and those these little like quick release clamps.
Yeah.
And
yep.
It's good. And basically built these 2x4 structures off the edge of the stadium like grandstands. But I didn't do anything like invasive because I didn't super have permission to do it, but I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer in this county, so I'm like, hey, it's kind of as much my property as yours, so I just it's be fine. And so I would practice. I would go up through that gate, over around a really high like stadium light, and then back down through it. And I would do it, 200, 300 times, and just get that maneuver down as part of a track. So that I would have that same entrance exit from it.
Is this just you? I mean, there's not a team that's like working to help you set this up. Like, this is just you, or is it not?
It's just me.
It's just, wow.
For Saudi of last year, like Jaws was there with me as well. But all of this season, for example, it's me.
Right. Well, I mean, I think there's probably a misconception, like maybe not to some of us that fly, but that you guys are NASCAR racers, and so obviously there's a team around you, and that does not appear to be the case at all.
There are people that I owe so much to that have helped me and have taken the time to sometimes somebody will just happen to be around to help me build a track or to race against or these things like that. But today I went to a local church, built an entire track, sat there and flew it for 7 hours, tore down the track, and drove home and started this interview. So yeah.
Man. So do you get tired? Do you get to the point where you hate it?
I'm exhausted. I wouldn't say I hate it, because I take time to remember how much of an opportunity it is. Like, it's I'll post like on my Instagram, like, here's a picture of today's office, and then I used to wear a tie to work every day, and now I'm here barefoot in, athletic pants, flying drones for a living. And if I get to a point in life where I don't remember that, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, that's the point where I have to be done, because it's not, I need to pass that on to someone else. Somebody else needs to be in a position to respect that opportunity. And so I do take a lot of time to make sure that I remember, like, hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. All right, let me give you my last question on DRL.
Yep.
You were last season's champion.
Yep.
How much of an advantage, if any, does that confer to you going into this season?
From what perspective you think?
Well, in the terms of, I mean, is this your fourth season racing DRL? Third. Okay. How much of an advantage do you have, A, being a veteran, and B, is there any advantage, whether it be mental or in any other way, that, hey, here comes Nurk, he won last year?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of advantage from being a veteran. With the exception of Vanover, there's a pretty good difference between the veterans and the rookies for now. Obviously, they're going to continue catching up. Vanover is virtuoso, so there's just no way around how fast he is, no matter what. And then for the fact that I was the 2018 champion, I would actually say that it is a hindrance more than it is a help, because now I have this, what for me for a long time was an unattainable thing, and I got it, and now repeating it has become the unattainable thing. And it's even weirder because at one point I had gotten there. And so it's this, I'd like to say that it makes me feel like I could become the 2019 champion, but
it gives you a little extra something to conquer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I wouldn't say it helps at all. I would say it makes it harder. There's something to lose now, It's because I guess to a degree, I can be afraid of people saying, "Oh, I guess it was a fluke," or stuff like that, and I don't want to be afraid of that, and I don't. I wish that I couldn't be, but sometimes those thoughts get in there, and it gets in the way of me putting myself into the headspace to win that race or that heat or that moment. It sucks.
Yeah, it almost sets you up for the absolute, or maybe it does set you up for the absolute worst kind of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, I only had a few tricks, and for those that aren't versed in imposter syndrome, it's this belief that I only had a few tricks, and the only reason I got here was because my tricks played out perfectly. And I mean, I could see how, like you were saying, it was a fluke. How that could get in your head, so that you would have to conquer that as well as everything else going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm trying really hard not to say I beat. I'm very trying to just keep it on the DL. So.
Yeah, it's in just to kind of bring it all full circle again. That's what that process that I described earlier is doing. It's the grind is me putting myself into a headspace to say that I've done all of the work that I can do. And then, the movies, for example, help me get into the attitude of a champion, right? And then the day of process is, how do I make sure that my brain is operating, it's a well-oiled machine, it's ready to go, it knows what it needs to do, so that at that moment when I walk out in front of the camera and say, let's go, everything is put in place. All of the processes are put in place to ignore that mentality of, I don't deserve to be here.
Yeah. That I like that. I will say that is that is professional practice. Like, that's not, there's, I think in my mind, I kind of had this idea that you guys just sort of walked out onto the course the day of or a couple days before and, slung a few packs around, and that's where you guys came from. But to hear that at least you, and I assume most of the other pilots are putting in that kind of intense practice is, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It's a career. It's professional. Like, we're here to be and retain being the best in the world at something, and you cannot, if you leave something like that on the table, it's it hurts worse than not having tried. So,
all right. Race day sounds very intense, and quite frankly, I don't know how well I would do under that kind of pressure, but Paul does awesome. In our next episode, we talk about Paul's favorite thing in drones, which may surprise you. You can go to the description below to check out all of the ways that you can get in contact with Paul, including his YouTube, his Instagram, and his several web pages. I'd also like to invite you to check out my Patreon, which helps support these channels. Thank you to my patrons, and I love your continued support. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsor, PyroFlip. They are awesome in the FPV space, and were kind enough to sponsor this episode with a coupon code which will give you 10% off when it comes to order time. Anyways, I will talk with you soon. Bye.